Good afternoon. I'm BNEWS Reporter Chris Flaherty. Last week, Marcelo Gomes Da Silva, a high school senior from Milford, Mass, was detained by ICE agents. He was driving a vehicle owned by his father, who ICE was initially targeting on his way to volleyball practice. Marcelo has been released on bond from the ICE facility here in Burlington. I'm here with State Representative Ken Gordon, who toured the facility after Marcelo's release. Ken, thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Chris, for having me here.
Of course. So just to start us off, what was your initial reaction when you heard what happened to Marcelo?
Well, from 6 days before the day we toured.
Yeah.
I mean, just to think that we live in a place where an 18-year-old boy, you know, he's 18, barely 18,
yeah.
can be taken out of a car having done nothing wrong. Mm-hmm. We see that the agents that are doing this are masked. I mean, imagine that, right?
Yeah.
And not showing ID. And then taken into a facility, and he has no clue why. He has no. Imagine how terrifying, right? That would be. And he said that. Mm-hmm. He said they asked him, "Do you know why you're here?" And he said, "No." And they said, "Well, you overstayed your visa by 2 years." Mm-hmm. And I think it was 2015, right?
Yeah, he said I was 7 years old.
He said, yeah. And the way he put it, right?
Yeah.
Ma'am, I was 7 years old. I don't know anything about visas at 7 years old. To think that this is where we are, rather, you know, we've got criminals we can be focusing in on, and no one would object to that. You know, if people come to our country and commit a crime and they get deported, you know, I don't think many people have a problem with that. But to focus on an 18-year-old and to say, well, you just happen to be in the way. We weren't looking for you, we're looking for someone else. As he said, that makes no sense. And it really doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and it inspires me how, like, positive, and he was smiling at the press conference yesterday. And, like, I know when I was 18, like, I was on the verge of emotional breakdown, not knowing if I was going to get into college to go through what he went through. Like, it's incredible.
To think about the whole situation, though, you know, if a person commits a misdemeanor in this country, entering this country and overstaying a visa is a misdemeanor, right, without being attached to an independent crime, and this wasn't. So if a person is arrested for a misdemeanor and they go to district court, much more likely than not, they're going to get released on what we call personal recognizance. Right. They get released, they're told, this is the date of your next court event, be here. And if you're not here, a warrant will be issued, consequences will be increased. But that's what happens, you get released. So sometimes you're only in a lockup situation for a matter of hours. Yeah. You know, at worst it might be one night, but he was locked up for 6 days with men in their 30s. And what did he do? He helped the men in their 30s. Yeah,
that was because he spoke other languages. He was translating stuff for them, and
he spoke 3 languages, right? And he said they were asked to sign documents that
they probably couldn't even read.
Anybody would know they couldn't read because they didn't speak English, and it was only a document in English apparently, right? And so he had to tell them what they were signing or not signing. It was an incredible opportunity to hear from an 18-year-old. Who had a level of innocence, like you said. Innocence may be taken away, but that level of innocence where he was smiling, saying, I want to do what I can to help those other people in there.
Yeah, no, for sure. That is something I wanted to touch on, because that really struck me when he said he was getting out, that he wanted to help the other ones in there, and if he was the only one that got out, he lost. Yeah. So that just makes me think, like, what can just ordinary citizens do right now in this time?
You know, I know that there have been protests at the center, and I think that's good because people realize that that other people who think like them are out there. They get empowered that way, and there can be some attention and focus on that. But you know, looking at what leverage we have and what we can do. So that's why I was glad the congressmen were both there. Right. I reached out to them early last week. And, well, I reached out to Seth Moulton, our congressman. Jake Auchincloss was there because that's Marcelo's congressman.
District,
Yeah, his district. But I reached out to Seth and I said, you know, this is important. You have congressional oversight. We have to get down there. He has a direct right to be there. You know, I believe I should have a right to be there because I'm the state representative who's got Burlington in my district. I want to know what happens in Burlington. As the town officials want to know what happens in their town, right? But he's got statutory authority. So yesterday, which meaning Thursday, by the time viewers see this, last Thursday, the Congressman Moulton's office called our office and said, okay, we can get there. We're flying in from Washington. We can get there at 4 o'clock. They got here a little after that, but they got here, and we were able to tour the facility. And I saw most of it.
Yeah,
Congressman, we were able to see all of it.
I did want to ask you about that because Marcelo, he did give us a lot of details about his stay, which were, I can't really say what they were on camera. I can't find the words, but what did you see when you went inside?
Yeah, and I would like to have a conversation about that because you were focused on a lot of his answers. What I saw, and also combined with people we talked to. So what I know is there are 8 cells in that facility. I saw 4 of them, and the 2 congressmen were able to see the other 4 when they toured the rest of the center. I saw people in at least some of the 8 cells at the time, and we were told at the time there were between 40 and 45 people there, which is to say some of their officers said 40 and others said 45, so it's somewhere in that vicinity. And we know that that morning there were 30 people there, and we know that those 30 were taken out, and so it was about 5:30 by the time we were having this conversation, so by 5:30 there were another 40 to 45 people in those 8 rooms, and they were probably the size of the back of a big box truck. That kind of a. They had no window. There was a window on the door, so that's why I could see in, and I could see people in there. And it looked like they had benches on the side, and the bathroom facilities they had was a cutout area of the cell where the walls go up about to where your chest would be. Yeah. So it's open, so you have no privacy at all. You think about the dignity of that, right? Right, when you're talking about anybody, but then you're talking about an 18-year-old, boy who I think his birthday was recent. So I think therefore he's barely 18. You think about that, right? There's a reason why certain people are picked up because they're here, especially if they're come here and then they commit a crime. You'd know where they are, right? There's reason, but there's no reason at all, I don't think, to have to treat someone, especially an 18-year-old boy who did nothing wrong other than accompany his family here when he was 5 years old, to those conditions. The congressmen both were in the Marines, and they said these were conditions that we were shocked to see when we got out. And we've been in some uncomfortable situations, right? To have to do that, there's no reason for it, right? ICE can get their job done without having to put someone into that type of humiliation, really, when you think about that.
It strikes me, one, that I don't think a lot of people know that this field office is in Burlington, but then again, that I don't think a lot of people knew where he was, that he was here in town.
That's a great point, because we saw media accounts throughout the week. Some of them said he was in Plymouth. Some said he was only here for a day or less, or we were assured from some areas that he wasn't when he was here the whole time. And then what I found curious was that I said, well, this was a unique circumstance because the court ordered him to stay, which wasn't the case. The court ordered that he not be removed from Massachusetts, right? So first of all, that court order came after a few days. So what about the first few days? There was no such order. So was that in the ordinary course of things, that someone's staying there for a few days? And second of all, I go back to, okay, we can't let him out, we can't assign him to a place outside of Massachusetts, but how about just treat him like a shoplifter, like someone who committed a misdemeanor, and say, look, this is the only place we have for you, but we don't need to do this as long as we know you're coming back. And look at Marcelo, right? As he said, the only home he's ever known is Milford, right? And he's in high school. He just wants to go back to his friends. He wants to go back to his family. The only things he's ever known, he wants to go back to. He's not leaving. He's not going to go hide somewhere. They know where he is, right? He's probably the least person that they need to worry about as what we call a flight risk. And he's, so that we can't just do that and treat someone with that level of dignity is something I don't understand.
Yeah, and I remember him asking for a Bible, and they couldn't even give him one, and then he mentioned, I think there were 2 guards that let him have a phone at night so he could talk to his father.
Right.
So it's, I know we sort of like look at ICE as this big scary entity, but it's just kind of like, it's nice to know that there's one person at least out there that has some sort of respect for this kid.
Yeah, think about, and I don't know this, but what if, some of the people inside that building, they had 18-year-old kids themselves?
Yeah, like these are workers with families and stuff, and they have to go home and they have to go to work to this. It's, I don't even know what the word is.
Yeah.
But yeah. So Ken, what happens next with ICE being here in Burlington?
Well, so the issue there is that they've been here since 2007. I took a look at material given to town meeting back then, and it was represented at town meeting. They would have no more than 4 cells. Well, they have 8. I don't know when the other 4 were constructed. Frankly, I don't know whether the 8 were constructed initially, because I don't know that. But that gives rise to one problem, which is, okay, they were given permission to construct, to build out the facility in the way they needed it, but who oversees that they did what they said they were going to do, because they don't let in anybody.
Right.
I don't know that any Burlington official, whether it be an elected person or someone from the building department, has confirmed that they're doing what they said they would do. And I wanted to go in there as a state rep, but I knew I would need to be accompanied by a member of Congress. And I'm glad that Congressman Moulton and Congressman Auchincloss came in and did that, so I could get as far as I did. And then I certainly trust their account of what they saw next, which was really more of what we saw when we looked at those 4 cells. What I saw was, and when we spoke to some officials there, they were talking about how they provide 3 meals, and they were talking about sometimes it's cold, and they said they supply sweat clothing. That's inconsistent.
Well, that doesn't match up with Marcelo told
Marcelo.
us. Yeah.
But the fact they would say that is consistent with someone who's staying there for some time.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're just being processed in and out, you don't really have to worry that often about what happens at night. The sweat clothing was because we were told at night it can get cold. Marcelo said we don't even have access to basically air.
Right.
It's only when we could get sort of
that
close
little
enough to the
window
crack in the
open.
door.
Yeah.
So it again goes to show that the town was given representations. It can't determine whether those representations were actually complied with. The law may be, the federal law may be on the side of ICE because it's written in that way.
Right.
So there is what we call preemption, that federal law preempts a local control. But people representing this town, including the building department, should at least be able to see what's going on in their own town.
Yeah.
And they can't. Yeah. And that was why it was important on that Thursday for us, at least me, to be able to get in there. And I would love to work with ICE who is it that they don't trust?
Right.
Why do they have any reason to believe that if our police chief or our town administrator or health inspector or anyone got in there, that what are they going to do? What trouble would they cause?
Right. Yeah. Ken, we've covered a lot. Anything else you would like to add?
I really appreciate the work that you do, because what can we do? Expose what's going on in our town, and one way that we do that is we have reports on BCAT, and people watch and they learn what's happening and can get together and respond. Get together with some ideas on what to do. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you for all that you do, and thank you for coming in. And thank you all for watching this community update. I'm BNEWS reporter Chris Flaherty here with our state representative Ken Gordon. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks, Chris.